I'd like to call to order the Saline Area Schools Board of Education meeting of February 25th, 2025. Standing as you are able, we're going to start the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Rebecca Singer, Jr. at the high school. You were awesome, Rebecca. Thank you. That was so easy. That was good. There are no public comment, but we do have one extended public comment. I'd like to ask the Saline Education Association representative, Bridget Corey, to please approach the microphone. You know how to turn it on and everything? And how much time are you going to need?
3 to 4 minutes.
Okay.
All right. Good evening. I am Bridget Corey, and I am a proud parent in this district. Raising my children in Saline has been a source of pride for my family. We value the district's history of excellence and appreciate the many opportunities and services it provides, both in and out of the classroom. There is so much to love about this community and school district. When I ask my children what they love most about the school, their answers are never about the facilities, programs, or security cameras. They love school because of the people, the ones that stand before them, inspiring, redirecting, encouraging, and supporting them. These individuals give of themselves with care and compassion that cannot be measured. And it is these incredible people who bring me here tonight. I have the honor of representing the dedicated educators behind me as the president of the Saline Education Association. Since COVID, the landscape of education has changed, and the challenges of this profession have only grown. Yet despite these obstacles, these heroes continue to show up every day because they care, because they believe every child deserves the opportunity to succeed. They are the ones who recognize a spark of potential in a student and ignite their curiosity, opening doors to new possibilities simply because they believe in them. While they are deeply passionate about their work, passion alone is not enough. They deserve to be fairly compensated for the work they do. The collective bargaining between Saline Area Schools and the Saline Education Association expired on December 31st, 2024. The previous contract, negotiated in the fall of 2021, was shaped by the uncertainty surrounding COVID, the economy, and public education funding. Given the climate at the time, any pay increases were modest, with 0% on the scale for the most of the staff for the past 2 years. The district worked with us during the difficult years that followed the crash of the housing market, so we were willing to work with them and prioritize the financial stability of the district. Over the course of the 3-year contract, record funding flowed into public education, even beyond ESSER relief funds. In this time, per pupil funding increased over 10%. Special education funding has grown. The district's fund balance has risen to approximately 24%. And most recently, the UAAL, which is a pension liability, was permanently reduced by 5.75%. Because of our partnership in the past, we trusted that when it was time to negotiate our contract, the district would respond appropriately. We had a history of working together and a relationship with the district built on honesty and trust. While we didn't always agree, we understood one another. Unfortunately, that has changed. Today, we are bargaining with a different administration and in a different financial climate. Although we are making good progress through language items in the contract, we are struggling to find common ground around the salaries of the people who work closely with children. We have seen substantial increases in revenue and a very healthy fund balance. We have also seen record inflation and increased healthcare costs that have put a strain on our educators financially. We believed the district would recognize this. Despite all of this, their first financial offer added 0% to the salary schedule. While there has been some movement from the district, they presented their best and final offer with an unwillingness to recognize the permanent 5.75% UAAL reduction. If this partnership was one of honesty, we would be able to factor in this new source of revenue. The Saline Education Association has requested mediation from the Michigan Employment Relations Commission And even our most senior member of the bargaining team, who has been bargaining the certified staff contract for over 2 decades, will be going to mediation for the first time. So as you can see, this has not been our practice. I didn't want to be here tonight. I didn't want to address you publicly. I wanted to keep the fight behind closed doors. However, the doors were shut on us. After the district presented their final best offer, I reached out to Superintendent Lodge. I was told he had nothing to discuss with me, and he stood in support of his team. I respect that, and hopefully all of you respect my decision to stand in support of my team, meaning all of these people behind me. My team is the heartbeat of this district. We are valued by this community. We bring the facilities and the curriculum to life. My team deserves more than just recognition. We deserve to be compensated fairly for the incredible work we do. We deserve a contract that ensures a comfortable life so we can maintain our focus on the classroom, on our students. With a growing teacher shortage, we must keep Saline a district that attracts and retains the best talent. Our community deserves it. Most importantly, our students deserve it. Saline has always been a leader, and we have the opportunity to lead, to show educators that working with our youth is valued and appreciated. Make people the priority, because at the end of the day, they are the driving force behind all of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Corey. Thank you. Right. We're at the, I have no response to last week's public comment. Revisions, approval of the agenda. We can add or remove items from the agenda, or they can be changed at the request of an individual board member or the superintendent. Agendas have to be approved before proceeding further. Do we have a motion to approve this agenda as printed?
So move, Stebbin.
Stebbin,
Second.
is that Tim?
Yep.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Great. Oh, sorry, 6-0. Thank you.
6.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We have several action items this evening. The first is I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the proposed 2024-2025 general fund budget amendment as submitted by Superintendent Owsley.
I'll make it. Motion Gerby.
Gerby.
Second, Tizides.
King, thank you. I think we may need.
I don't think so. No.
Would you like us to do B first? We'd like to modify the agenda ever so say. Without objection, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the issuance of the 2025 school building and site bonds, Series 2, not to exceed $60 million, as prepared by the Troon Law Firm and submitted by Assistant Superintendent Owsley. Do I have a motion?
Well, I'll make that one too, and thank you, taxpayers.
Thank you. Darcy Berwick, seconding. Thank you very much. So, at this point, we welcome Miranda Owsley to, if you can get through that way, it's a bit tight. We're going to have a discussion.
Well, we have 2 motions on the table. Which one are we?
We're going to be looking at motion B first when Miranda's ready with her presentation. No, we're just working our, did I miss? Did I? Miranda, are we doing A or B?
Budget amendment. Yeah, we're
doing the budget on the back up to Ed. No, sorry, we're looking at the.
I apologize. There is one thing in the slide deck that I noticed was an error, and so I will have to update that, and then I will send it to you. I was just going to send you the updated one, so that's why the delay. Oh, sorry. Were you not ready for me?
We went ahead because you asked us to go.
We're ready for you. No, everything's fine. We're ready for you, though.
Okay. So what you're approving, and that action item is our February budget amendment to the current year. So go ahead into the next slide. And this, we have all of our total revenue. We have in the green slide is or in the green column is what you are approving per those state sources, local, intermediate. So I've done in the next column though, I've also compared those numbers to our original budget that we passed back in June, and I'm also comparing them to some actuals from the prior year. So in each of these, if we talk all the way about the right column, all the way over to the right in the gray, we look at that as looking at what we're amending today compared to what we truly spent at audited final things from last year. And so you'll see our local sources, we are up $554,000. The immediate sources is $2.8 million. This is largely because of state aid, the intermediate, the Act 18 dollars that come from WISD, and the local source of our tax dollars that come to the ISD and then come to the school district. This is highly based upon the payout that comes in December, and that's coming from our prior year's actuals. They wait to do the final payout of those in the next year so that they can use those actual numbers. In FY 23 to 24, we saw a $2 million increase in spending in special ed. So therefore, seeing this increase in revenues is not surprising. It is actually following the trends of what we are spending. So we fill out a 4096 is what it's called in September, and that's how they utilize those numbers to then do that last plug for the last payment of the prior year. So we kind of see some lag in that timing of our expenditures to when we receive those revenues. In the next side, we have state. We had continued in prior years to pull out those state one-time and federal one-time as we kind of saw some of the COVID funding and things like that kind of come in. But you'll see we're kind of getting back to now we're not having those. I left it in there, separated out though, because we still had some of that money last year. So holistically though, on the state and the federal side, that's a reduction of $1.5 million. So if we go to the next slide, I kind of took a much more deeper dive into, oops, one too many. Go back one. So I did a deeper dive into the state revenues. We're in this point where in the last couple of budget presentations that I've done, I've said we really need to kind of watch at some of those things the state may do. In general, ORS is one of those the pension reform in past and unfundedness is really coming to be a hot topic in the legislative sessions. So in general, these numbers in the total on the bottom tie out back to the last slide in state sources. So we kind of just zoomed into that one section in there. So we pulled them out into some categories here. So I've listed it as per pupil. That's kind of like the set thing here. This is how much you get per pupil. Then in the next column, in the next row is ORS 147A. So the 147A4 is a new item, and it was brand new in the PA Act 120 of 2024. And with that, we also already get a 147A1 and then 147A, I think 3 or 2. It's one of those. With that, so in general, the 147A4 that was brand new, we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide, but that was about 2.1 million, but then our 147A2 did reduce about 735,000. So they're lumped together there in one lump. Then our 147C, I did write here that there's a net zero. So that part of what the ORS revenue that comes goes right back out on the other side of expenditures. The district, so it's kind of, it feels like a pass-through. We're not able to put it on kind of a balance sheet. We have to record it as revenue, and we have to record it as expenses throughout every one of our funds, functions, and things to that matter. But it is a net zero. But you'll see it's a lot of dollars. So as we talk about what our total at the bottom line of what our revenues are and expenditures are for the district, it kind of makes this inflated up and inflated down. So for a couple years, it's called, they added a one-time payment, and it was more than one time, but to that, it made all of our expenditures and our revenues up, and they were big swings, millions of dollars in one direction. So we see this year that has swung down. They're making less payments to that unfunded liability through schools, and so therefore it's a whole reduction on one of our line items there. So it feels like the district's swinging up and swinging down, but it is really a net zero when we back up from looking at expenditures and revenues. It is net zero effect. So in order to make these numbers kind of also tie out to the state, there I put a couple line items in our other discretionary, I'm calling them. Special ed has a specific line in the state budget, and so that's pulled out there separately, as well as grants, and then grants one time just to match our formatting that we've been doing for several years. So one of the other things that I've kind of done on this slide as well, if we go all the way over to the right in the gray, you'll see I've kind of lumped some things together to get to kind of illustrate some ideas here. When the government, when it finally got signed and passed that we had $0 per pupil, that was a really scary time for a moment in realizing that we weren't really, everyone had them in their budgets, all three governors, House, Senate's proposals had money in for the per pupil allowance, and it didn't come through. So they took that out. We all had it in our budgets. However, they said you will get this new 147A4 revenue line item. And you can see as that came out, there was documents and things like that to show the districts that cash-wise you'll be okay. This offsets this, even though this has to do with pension. This is going to be okay. So I've lumped those two numbers together, so you can see that together is approximate reduction of 237. So that's comparing last year's numbers to our budget in February that we're amending right now. And the next line item, I kind of just put an X there to just state for the moment of let's not even count it in. It's in revenues and expenditures, and so let's just not count that in. It's a net zero effect to the district. So as we go down to the next, so the other discretionary, that's a reduction of about 10,000. We go to special ed, not surprising to see those factors there. Those are as well based upon our reported actual numbers in special ed, and we're receiving a increase there. Then in grants one time, I kind of lumped those together because there were some grants inside of the one time that became no longer one time. One of the safety monies rolled into a new mental health and safety together, so they kind of are no longer one time, they're kind of ongoing. And so the net of our grants in the state side is up 420,000. A lot of this has to do with our mental health and safety money, which is 31AA, which we are still spending the last year's pot. We are spending those in the arrears through these couple of years where our funding was put out with the state budget but didn't start receiving it till very late in the year. We are in that grant in arrears. The funding came so late in the year, we started using that pot late, and so we're still this year spending the larger pot that is from last year's allocation. We know this year the allocation is a lot smaller, and so that will affect us next year. So on some of those estimates that you are not approving, that there's there for illustration on that form, those reductions are in there in those revenues. So if we look at those buckets kind of there, it's all of the state together, but if we subtract basically out the 147C, that is a net zero effect to the budget, we are increasing in the state whole pot of actual dollars coming in 788,000. So as we go to the next slide, this talks a little bit about some of the confusion that the state has in its legislative processes. So part of the PA Act 120 of 2024, it's actually the whole act for the whole entire budget. So lots of pages. It has every little line item in for the whole budget, or per pupil, every single grant that some we get, some we don't get. But one of the pieces was the two new pieces of language in this budget, or in that act. So one of them was the 147A4 that I referenced. It is 2.1 million. How they equated this was that they discussed that the new revenue would equal to a change from 20.96% down to 15.21 for one part that makes up the ORS total rate. So I will also show this on another slide, but the ORS rate is made up of multiple parts. So keep that in mind here. So instead of fixing the ORS rate on what we pay, they said, leave it alone, pay exactly what you're paying, but we're gonna give you this line item over here for that equates to this change. And as you saw in the previous slide, they also reduced and didn't have any per pupil funding at the same time as they gave that. The other piece in the other temporary fix was also 147G, which also is coming in a source of a revenue. They stated that the healthcare fund is now no longer underfunded. And right now in certain people's plans, because there's various plans for our system, that they are deducting 3% out of their paychecks and goes directly to ORS. They're saying that it's not unfunded, that 3% doesn't need to be collected. Instead of actually ending it, they gave us a one-time revenue for the district to give this revenue back to the people that are paying it. So again, it is a pass-through. I do want to caution though, I did have to, in the budget though, we did have to expend tax expense for this and a very small amount of ORS for this, because it is when we get the revenue from the state, we turn around and are paying it back to employees, currently starting the Friday. The employees and the district also have to tax it because it was a tax exempt at the time that it was deducted. So there is about a $45,000 expense that's the taxes, and the ORS is a small part because it's not every plan. So part of the next thing, when this happened back in the kind of summer, fall time, a lot of people spoke to their legislators, this is a problem. This one-time revenues coming in is problematic to look at our future. They responded with the PI Act 127 of 2024, which then makes both of those changes permanent. So instead of giving revenues, the permanent change to the ORS rate, one piece of the total ORS rate from 2096 going down to 1521. So on surface, it looks like, hey, the ORS rate is going down 5.75, and it permanently removes, we will no longer be required to deduct 3% from people's paychecks starting in October for the state's fiscal year. So they are becoming permanent. So if you go to the next slide, and this is not meant for you to see the actual numbers, it's just trying to illustrate a point here. On the very left, we have our fiscal year 24, then we have 25 and 26. So all of these changes, the revenue kind of coming in is happening in the 25 column, and then the changes to the rates are coming in the FY 26. So why I've put in there the FY 24 is really important. You can't see because I said it's kind of small. You will get these slides in PDF so you can look at it further later. But in this health column in FY24, there is 7%. Then when I go to the middle column, one column in there is zeroed out, but all the other columns have changed. So some from FY24 to FY25, even though the columns, some of the columns decrease, other ones increase, and so the reference there is the main plan that most people are currently still in is it went up from 24 to 25, 0.02%. So very small, but didn't really go down even though parts inside of there went down. Then when we go all the way to 25, 26, all the way to the right, those rates are now released, which is kind of historically very, very early for them to release these. This is talking about for the fall of 25, 26, the main rate at the top is decreasing. It is decreasing 1.45%. And then there are some other plans, as you look down the other plans, there are plans that are decreasing 5.75%. So I just wanted to show that though the legislation feels very it's going to be this, the devil's in the details, as some plans are going down to that, some plans are not. So the other plan is going down the 1.5. So it varies from 1.45% to a 5.75%. So I just want to go into that a little bit. And the next slide. So we start with expenses. Now we flip to the other side. This is one way to break down our expenses and kind of see where the increases are happening. So as you can see, most of our increases is in salaries. So we saw from last year to this February amended budget is a $2.5 million increase in salaries pay that we're budgeting to pay. The next piece is benefits, and so what I wanted to do, and why that says the benefits again, the blue row is not counted into the bottom so that it still ties to our total expense numbers, but it's just illustrating the fact that when I take out that 147, that's our true cost to other benefits that really did increase. So, you know, taxes, health care, HSA payments, cash in lieu payments, things like into those natures that it really is still increasing. So having that 147, because in general all of ORS is a benefit, is kind of was skewing those. It looked like it was reducing, but actually one of the big factors was that 147. So when we take it out, it kind of gives a truer picture to the rest of all the benefits that we pay for staff. And as you can see down in the other ones, they're much smaller, varying numbers. So then if you go to the next slide, this is how it breaks out and how you guys approve it. It is kind of state mandated. That's the separation of kind of function codes. For the reference, in the next slide, if you view these later, just for reference, it kind of tells you a little bit more about the breakdown. But we see here the same format where I'm showing dollar differences and percent differences from the original budget to February's amendment, as well as still giving you some facts to the actuals from last year. One of the things that I was trying to fix really quickly when you guys, I didn't realize we were going first, is those percentages on the bottom. In the document that you have in your packet, that's the true document. It picked up some wrong numbers as the fund balance is the bottom. It is I'm not saying it's 5.2 and 3.4. That was just solely a typo when I snippeted from Excel. So I will refresh that and resend with correct numbers at the bottom for this. But the numbers for the total expenditures is correct on here. So you see some movements kind of all throughout here, made of lots of little different things. So as we saw before from the previous slide, a lot of it though goes to staffing. With staffing, our salaries plus benefits is, roughly 86% of our budget. So that's what a lot of these are made up of. And then there's a lot of different moves that happen. Technology position kind of moved to instructional technology. That kind of shifts where that's located. Even though the position didn't necessarily be an increase, it shifted from one area to another. There's different changes that we've made staffing-wise for special ed. We are increased paraprofessionals. We are increased some psych positions. We had EL staffing, whether it be positions and some hours, as well as healthcare. The contribution and covered employees changing. And when I say healthcare, I mean also the actual healthcare payments, cash in lieu payments, and HSA contributions. I kind of lump those all together in the health bucket sort of thing. We have grant changes. A lot of the stuff when you see instructional staff services line item, that includes a lot of things that are coming through grants. So we have 35J in instructional or literacy grants, with 35G for Michigan getting kids back on track. A lot of those are in that section, as well as mental health coaches. So we increased with that bigger pot that we are using this year, that increased a position there. So there's a lot of moving parts to that, but we did, it's not surprising, added needs kind of comes in a lot of special ed, like paraprofessionals, and we're seeing fully staffed and increases than we were through the last couple of years in those categories, seen by also the revenue on the flip side for our special ed costs. So that is it. The next slide is just for reference for future, so kind of gives some definitions on there, a slide that I shared other times. So, any questions?
That was a lot of information. The board,
Yes, it is a very unique time, and it's also going to continue to change. So it's hard because, in general, our pension system's tied to legislation, which also just, it's a lot of moving parts, a lot of details. So I apologize.
right. Brad has a question.
I have a question and then I have a comment. I'll make the comment first. You should know that obviously this has our attention, and if you're on the finance team, I think I could say that this is going to go firmly on our agenda for the 11th of March for us to do a little bit more of like a deeper dive. We want to look at where things are and what's coming in and all that kind of thing. So I would imagine that on the 11th, we will give some more dedicated, we like to look at more of the details, right, in finance, and then we'll report out to you guys about anything we thought that was interesting there. The one thing I want to ask about was PA Act 120 and PA Act 127. So I just want to assure, so if I'm reading this correctly, right, 3% is going back to our employees, you said this Friday?
A portion of it is. We were receiving a portion of that money in our state aid. It started in February, so last week we received money for that. And then, yes, the portion that we have is going out to pay paychecks there. And then depending on the legislation is kind of having a temporary, they might do a fix which will adjust maybe timing sort of thing of how the rest of the money, as we get it, we will continue to give it to employees.
That's fair.
Yep.
And then the healthcare 3%, we're just not collecting that whatsoever anymore.
No, that is what that 3% that you talked about right now. And
Okay.
right now I'm receiving the revenue that goes
Right.
right back to the employees. Then it will stop in October of 2025. It will just no longer be deducted from employees. So we're in this medium time this year.
Yeah.
The intent of the language is to fully, everything that comes out of employees' paychecks from October to
Right.
September is the intent of the language. Right now, our allocation will not cover that amount of time, but I do think that the
Got it.
legislation
Okay.
is,
That-
the
that-
intent was there, so I think they have a fix that has not passed, so it's not like to us yet, but it sounds like that is, both parties are at the table trying to get back to the intent.
Sounds like a phase out almost to me. So,
Yeah,
okay.
it can't make it easy, you know.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Definitely,
Thanks.
and I appreciated your explanation that some plans used it and some didn't, and that's why it's-
Correct.
yeah.
It is not all employees. I think approximately 52% of employees have the 3% healthcare
Right, so
deduction
not
in the
all
current.
paychecks will see any change whatsoever. Anyone else at the
Correct.
rest of the table?
Yeah.
Jennifer?
Miranda, my first question was, is there a particular reason this is on our agenda tonight for approval for the budget amendment before it goes to the finance committee? Is there a deadline that we need to file this with the state, or?
You know, in general, we try to do as early as possible when we get count kind of in, and then we see our state aid kind of update with some more things. So in general, there's no requirement to. In general, we're supposed to, if your things change significantly, you're supposed to come to the board and make changes. But it's also like we'll be back in, May and June starting already budget amendments at year end. So nope, we don't necessarily have to do it, other than there's a lot of changes that are reflected in staffing things that are June. I mean, most of the time I'd like to do it before kind of winter break, but sometimes a delay in some of the information that kind of comes in state aid, we continue to get new line items, and so it kind of makes a clearer picture. And then also we have in December, we have open enrollment for January, so I like to see those January numbers come in for staffing kind of things. That helps that piece of that estimation.
Because the font was, maybe it's my eyesight, the font's really hard to read on some of the presentations, and a lot of times
Yes, it wasn't intended to read, it was trying to get the global picture.
Right, but a lot of times we'll get decks ahead of time in Steve's weekly update that we can have a little bit more time to digest, and I would appreciate us considering getting a copy of this to look into. I totally agree with Brad, a deeper dive. We used to, in Finance Committee a long time ago, Tim, you might have been on it at the time, we used to request deeper dives on particular line items. I'd like to see information on the 1.2 with regards to additional needs. If you can back up a slide or two. Yep, there you go. Oh, go forward one. So added needs, right there, second line item. And the other one I'd like to see a deeper dive on is instructional services at 630K.
Mm-hmm.
603, I'm sorry.
So added needs is special ed and some like other interventions.
Thank you. Just because of the big offset there.
Correct.
Um,
Those grants fall into the instructional staff point, which we can follow up on a future date. Normally in this time of year, I bring the amendment and there is no slide deck and slideshow. I usually do it just for the June one.
Yeah.
That we're doing the amended one, we just do a much shorter abbreviated version. It felt like there were a lot of legislative changes and kind of moving parts this year, so I felt like it was more needed, and so that's kind of a little bit more why having some more
and you're
details.
great, and I totally appreciate all of this extra detail. I would like to be considerate of our finance team committee members and get their thoughts and do their work. So if it isn't impeding the business of the district, I'd like us to consider having it go to finance and then come on the agenda for vote, because I would like to spend time with that and hear their thoughts as well.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, in response to Jennifer, we did discuss this a little bit in the last board meeting, so we we had an idea where things were going. We didn't look at it like this, but you kind of gave us the broad view of where things were going. So we had a heads up. Couple things, the Act 18 increase, that was pretty significant. Does that get us to roughly 100% funding for special ed with?
You know, it's complex in the
it's
concept of what comes in and what time and year. Like I said, in this year, we are getting the payment they're calculating it off of prior years.
Yep.
But in prior years, we get a start to that funding, as well as the state uses our 4096 from prior years to fund us in this year. So it's not as easy as those exact ones in this year. In general, in our budget and what I show for special ed and what I show for there, it's close. It's not exact. It's kind of like a lag.
Since we do get the lag, is there a possibility we could look back and see, okay, this is what we spent last year. I know some of that revenue didn't come in until this year. I'd just like to know if we're roughly at 100%.
Mm-hmm. And there's also
for
federal
when we look
money
at the
in
ISD
IDA too.
budget and stuff like that.
Yep,
So,
I'd have to do a much deeper dive because it is a lot more detailed to say exactly what percent, because I'd have to go forwards and backwards to calculate an exact amount, to know an exact percent for you.
Okay. And then the other thing is it seems like at the state level, the money goes into a mixing bowl. They mix it up and they pull it out and they say, oh, let's throw it here, here, and here. And all this 147C, A, G, all that stuff is just kind of a convoluted mess. And thank you for keeping good tabs of it, because that's what got Ann Arbor in so much trouble, for not keeping good tabs on it. But Brad mentioned, and I was going to ask too, the 3%. So we have received some of the 3%.
Correct. So it comes in our state aid right now, and the set general philosophy of state aid comes, in 1/11th increments. There are some things that go in quarterly increments that come through there. So though they have slated and wrote in a total year allocation, yes, we only got part of that in currently. So we are under the premise of, as we get the money in, it'll go back out. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
So if I could clarify, Vice President Stebbin, are you asking to table this motion until March 11th?
I didn't make the official request, but I'd like to hear what my colleagues on the board think.
So Vice President Stebbin would like to engage in a discussion of a non-yet motion.
Well,
Not
I mean, the reality.
I'm just putting it out there, and I would like to hear what everyone thinks, but
I think as long as we have Miranda's expertise and opinion that it doesn't impede the work of the district, then I'm perfect. We can approve it whenever you guys want.
Yeah, it just continues to get farther into the year, and it gets just problematic on the next kind of budget. It doesn't impede anything. Nothing will not go out in this corner.
in the next 2 weeks, it won't.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yep. But it also, I'm not redoing the numbers. That I will come with the same the same numbers, there. Just so you're
Understood.
aware.
Understood.
Okay.
I mean,
Unless you find better numbers, then
I guess what I would
coming to 12,000 in the hole is not bad.
Right. I guess what I would say is that, I don't anticipate finding anything alarming here. But if we did find something alarming, there's no reason why either we couldn't present that as information to us, or we couldn't do additional amendments, or, you know what I'm saying? So I guess I would say that, because this isn't our final budget, I don't see a whole lot of danger in just allowing us to continue our work going forward.
I-
You would like Miranda to have the presentation available, for example, for my Friday memo, so you
Yeah,
can
that'd be
see it and have some time to review it, and then ask follow-up questions at the March 11th meeting, and then approve it.
Yes, exactly, and have it go to Finance Committee. You have a meeting on the 11th?
We do.
You guys
Yeah.
will have the presentation in your hands this evening. I just
Yeah.
needed to fix the one thing and
Yeah, I
didn't get
just-
a chance to send it.
And I wanna stand still by Brad's comment, because I expect that we'll find all sorts of things here in order, but to see this for the first time and to just get
Yeah.
the summary in email, it's $77 million, and I need to be a good steward.
Yep.
So I would just request a little
So-
extra time.
So
live with them.
Brad and Jason are willing to withdraw your motion and,
Yeah, I'll make it on the 11th,
Yep.
probably.
okay,
unless
so
it's
we have a
weird.
new motion like, a recommended motion to table this report and adoption until March 11th. Do I have someone making that motion?
So I'll make the motion then.
Yes, or anyone seconding that?
Fine. Yeah, we'll do our work.
Is it-
Second, Gerby.
Gerby, thank you. So all in favor then, please say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
All right, 6-0. Thank you very much, Brenda. Oh, we may need you.
The next item is the bond.
The next, is the motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the issuance of 2025 school building and site bond Series 2, not to exceed 60 million, as prepared by True Law Firm and submitted by Assistant Superintendent Owsley. Brad Gerby motioned and Darcy Berwick seconded. Is there anything we need to know?
Nope, this is just issues the cash of Series 2, and so it's one of the 3 series. We did Series 1 in 2025, or we're doing this one in 25. The other one was in 2023 that we did. It kind of slated just in the schedule of timing for cash flow.
Great. No questions? Nope. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
All right, 6-0. Thank you very much, Miranda. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 11th, 2025 closed session of the Board of Education for the purposes to consider a confidential attorney-client privilege communication pursuant to Section 8H of the Open Meetings Act. And that motion has been made by,
I can make it. Stebbin?
and seconded by, how about our trustee secretary? Who made the minutes? No conflict there. Thank you. So you AP government folks who are out there, this is the time where we look at the closed session meetings. The closed session is not open to the public, so neither are the minutes. So we quietly read them, make our vote, and then carry on with the meeting. That's why there's going to be we're not going to say anything though, but thank you. I appreciate you putting your fingers in your ears. Have they all been returned to you, Secretary Berwick? Is that a yeah? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you very much. No, opposed? Hearing none, 6-0. Thank you so much. I'd like to entertain a motion that, this is me. I'd like to entertain a motion that the Board of Education designate the superintendent as its representative in determining the definition of assault as submitted by me. And I've got some pieces of paper for you. I didn't know when these were. Could you, pass those along, please? And first of all, do we have a motion?
So move Stebbin.
And support?
Second, Tizities.
The 2 J's. Thank you very much. Okay, so in effect, I've given you a piece of paper. It's just easier. I was just going to read this, but having it written out is easier. According to the SEA, the board is the determining factor of defining what assault is. We're talking about students assaulting, right? Students assaulting teachers, staff. If there's a disagreement between staff and the administration, the board shall be the deciding vote. However, if the board chooses to formally designate the superintendent as its representative for this purpose, it can do so. We haven't done so at this time. It's never come up before. So Superintendent Lodge has been working with the understanding that he's our designee for all procedural matters and negotiation matters like this. And today, though, he's asking the trustees at the table to formally designate the superintendent as the board's representative for this purpose. And the definition they're using is Jennifer Starlin at True and Law basically said, the Michigan compiled law, and I won't read all the numbers. We're talking about physical assault against an employee, volunteer, or contractor. And physical assault means intentionally causing or attempting to cause physical harm to another. That's pretty well all I know about it, but if you have questions or discussion points, basically, rather than every time an assault comes up and the question arises as to whether it's intentional or not, or if it's assault or not, rather than call the board together for a special meeting, we'll just designate our superintendent as we designate so many other things to him for this particular issue. I think I've understood that correctly. And if I'm wrong, let me know. Any questions, queries, quibbles? Darcy?
I guess I just wanted a little bit more context. Is this in regards to handbooks, contracts, policy? Where is this impactful?
Yeah, this is in response to the grievance that we've been dealing with for a little while now. Before you were on the board, Darcy, we had a meeting with the SEA in this room to discuss that grievance, which some of that was associated with students assaulting staff members. So as a result of that, I, along with our administrative team, have determined that assault is this intentional, hurting a teacher or a staff member, as there are a number of times that there are physical interactions. Most of the time that is occurring with our students, our special needs students. And as a result of that, I felt like it was important to define the definition of assault with the intention part around it as suggested by our attorney. And as a result of that, the SEA requested that you make me the person that can make that decision. And ultimately, that's where we are right now. In addition, as you note in the Friday memos, I am now, and have been for the last couple months, listing anytime there is a physical issue with a staff member, and we're putting those in the memos so that you are always seeing when that's happening. Now, I'm not defining if they're intentional or not, but for this particular grievance, to resolve it, the SEA has requested that you make me the decision maker for what the definition of assault is, or you define it.
So the context really is in regards to contract negotiations. This definition isn't then applicable.
It's not the contract negotiations.
I'm sorry, I
No,
apologize.
the grievance that was associated with this particular issue.
But aren't the list of grievances aren't there different levels?
Yes, and the levels came where it tried to get resolved, and it wasn't resolved, so then it went to the board,
So is this
and then
just
it went back to the superintendent, which was where it lies right now.
So this is a one-off, or this is for every situation moving forward?
It's for every situation moving forward. If there is a student assault, and then I had to, or the next superintendent has to define, was there intention that happened there, or was that a manifestation of the student's disability? So I do believe it's important that this is the definition moving forward.
Okay.
So I was glad to hear, so the SEA did ask you to bring this to us? Is that
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I did.
So you're telling me like this definition down here that says physical assault means intentionally causing or attempting to cause physical harm to another through force or violence has been collaboratively defined between you and the SEA?
Not necessarily. I'm saying that that ultimately, when there is disagreement, which there has been, that the superintendent or the board needs to decide. And therefore, I feel like this is the appropriate definition and sought legal guidance to determine that as well.
So how does that solve the grievance if
Because
if
the grievance has basically been resolved, but one of the last components of it was to get the board to approve me as the decision maker for this definition. And then the grievance is inherently already resolved.
But this definition then is agreeable to both parties.
It's agreeable that this was the approach that needed to happen for us to move forward with the grievance.
But you're giving us a definition at the very bottom
Right,
that
'cause
comes
that's-
from Jennifer Starlin and from this, but, so I guess I'm asking again definitively, are you in agreement with them? Because if we allow you to define it and you define it as this, and then I'd want to know that like they were kosher with it.
Okay, I would not say that I feel, I don't want to speak for the SEA, but they did not want the term intentional in there. And I felt like that was important because we have so many times, most of the time, that a lot of this is happening because of the manifestation of a student's disability.
So this is not in concurrence with their definition.
But they're recognizing that they're not in charge, so to speak, of defining assault. You as the board are, or I am as their designee.
Okay.
I'll
let you guys ask questions. I want to think about this for a minute.
Is this specifically toward staff, or is this students included? Is it assault on a student?
The crux of the grievance was about staff members getting injured.
Well, but I mean, going forward, defining it this way, are we only defining it or only appointing you to define it when there's an assault to a staff member? Or is it
This
any assault?
particular one is, the Jennifer Starlin makes note, as Michael pointed out, physical assault against an employee, volunteer, contractor.
Right. So my question would be, if we're including the word intentional, which is, I pulled up MCL, and that is the verbatim reading of the law. But if we're including intentional and the student was assaulting another student and inadvertently caused harm to a staff member, are we calling that intentional toward the staff member or intentional toward the student? Because I think that would be an important distinction.
I mean, in this particular case, we are truly just talking about if a student, I guess a hypothetical situation, a student is attempting to assault another student and then inadvertently hits a staff member, we would still go back to say, was this a manifestation of the student's disability? Did they intend to do that to the student and or the staff member? And then we would apply this definition. It's not meant to be applied with like student to student though, in this context. So I will say the grievance has been signed off on.
Yeah.
It's just, this was one final area that the SEA requested us to address. Either you as a board define it, or I do as your designee.
So it's
So,
Jennifer, Tim, and
okay.
Darcy.
Sorry, so I was in this grievance meeting with Michael and Jenny, just so I can provide a little lens. This was an open meeting, so I'm not discussing anything that shouldn't be discussed here at the table. I also see the SEA in the back of the room nodding their head in disagreement, so I just want to acknowledge that. I remember this conversation, and I just want us to be careful with this, and I do not have a copy of the grievance folder with me that was presented that evening. Happy to bring it back another time for anyone who would like to look at that. But I remember going through the pages to read some of the documents that were provided to us by the SEA, and there were several pages talking about the designee of the board. And I specifically asked about that in the meeting and said, we do not have a designee. The board is the board. However, the president speaks for the board, and I kind of quoted some policy and procedure that we have. So I want us to be very careful in having anyone, not just Steve, not just the superintendent, act on behalf of the board. And I would call our attention to this, and Michael just did tell me, he wrote this up, it was not in our packet, so I would have flagged this ahead of time had I read this ahead of time. The fourth paragraph says, Superintendent Lodge has been working with the understanding that he is our designee for all procedural matters like this. So I now understand where some of that is coming from and the grievance binder. However, I do not feel comfortable with having any staff member or other trustee be a designee on behalf of the board in all procedural matters. I think the board is the board of 7 at the table. I personally, and I think Michael would agree with me, and I know I heard Jenny say this, we all had a good feeling after that meeting. We felt like it was very respectful. There were some disagreements for sure, but I felt like it worked out very well to have our committee there and to help facilitate and ask questions as a third party. And I would like to see us preserve that right in the future.
Fine. Tim? Darcy?
Yeah, no, apologies if I don't have all the background. Yeah, if I don't have all the background information, I would guess I'm just requesting a little bit more time so that I'm more familiar with the context that's given. That's just my preference.
Brad?
I guess I'm curious because I like what Jennifer is saying here about the board speaks for the board and all of that, and that we want to make a definition on physical assault here. But I would like us to allow for some comment on this and some things in that regard. So I am wondering if this would be agreeable. We could refer this to policy, and then policy could take a look at this under either definitions or put it into our policy, and then they can have like kind of the conversation about where they would want this to go. And now they could talk to students, they could talk to staff, they could talk to community members, they could talk to all these people who might want to have some input with us and build because the board at some level we speak on behalf of the community too, right? So I guess that's what I would like to, that's how I would see as a preferred
Can I just ask a
destination,
clarification question? Because what we're talking about here is not a policy. It's a little bit more grievance committee than policy
Right.
committee because it's specifically with regard to partnership with our union,
Right.
this particular union. So I like your idea to kind of review it in a different way. It might fall into grievance versus
I'm fine with
policy.
that. I just like the idea of us getting a little more information, a little more background, a little more comment, and then having to move on it. You guys can say what you...
Student Rep Thomas.
I had a question of clarification. I think it's been said a couple times. So I'm a little confused. Would this mean that you would be the sole designator determining whether it's the technical definition of assault or whether it's a manifestation of a student's disability?
No, it would be the definition of assault. What happens with manifestation of a student's disability would be that a team gets together to determine if they feel that it was a manifestation of student's disability. For example, if they got together, the IEP team would get together and they would discuss what happened, and then they'd look at the student's disability within the IEP or potentially 504, and then they would say, okay, did this intentionally happen, or was this part of the students, the way they operate on a daily basis, part of their behavior plan, that type of thing. So no, it wouldn't be me determining if it was a manifestation of a disability. It's instead saying that I believe we should take the MCL definition, means this is the legislative definition, from our legal team recommends we should use this definition, and I agree with that.
Okay, that was my question, because I wasn't sure whether there would be a team determining whether that was just a niche that would involve different procedures.
No, it would be a team.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
So real quick, so I did look back, and it is, be physical assault means intentionally causing or attempting to cause physical harm to another through force or violence. struggle with the word intentional because I think that is somewhat subjective. And that is that's my hang up. I see it's in this, and so that's why you came up with it, or that's why they came up with it. But I don't know. I think in life, I just think it's too subjective, I guess. So that's my hang up. I don't know.
Right, welcome to the world of the law, right? I would, at this point, since I asked the two J's if you would be comfortable, this is a hot mic, tabling this until the next meeting while we gather more information. I did not expect there to be this much confusion, but then it turns out the question is, are we talking about a simple designation of the superintendent to deal with this sort of thing is part of the, in all times when it comes up? Or are we talking about a new definite or clearer definition of the language of what is assault? And that's unclear to me. So unless you have a real easy answer right now, I'd like to table this until the next meeting and we get more information. And perhaps also reach out to the union to get some additional.
Thank you. Just to confirm, yes, motion withdrawn.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
my thing is, I do feel that we should, as a board, eventually designate Superintendent Latch. I'm more hung up on the wording myself than who is, than giving Superintendent Latch the authority.
I'm not gonna.
All right, well, my concern was that we'd be coming back every time there'd be an issue of assault, and I think it should just, we should be designating certain work and activities to the superintendent, along with the hundreds and hundreds of other things we designate to him, have him as our designee for the board. So,
But one thing I do have a question about, though, so if we go back to the grievance committee and work through this more, what more information do we need? Like, bring in Jennifer Starling from Troon to sort of tell us why she believes we should use that definition, and then the SCA to say why we should not? That is not, by the way, that is not what they were asking to have happen tonight. That they were asking for the board to say that I am the designee to define this language. They weren't asking for you to come back and debate the language and then kick it back to the grievance committee. However, you obviously do what you feel is best. That's not what was asked to resolve the grievance. To resolve the grievance, what was asked was for me to come back tonight and state what the definition is of physical assault, and then for you to either agree that you're defining it that way or to allow me to define it. I'm just pointing that out. So it's up to you.
I'm just not sure there's congruence on.
I would agree. So to reply to Steve's question, what else would you need? I heard Darcy when she was saying a little bit more time. I think we said we'd like to hear what the SEA says if there is congruence, to Brad's point. And it would be helpful to, this is not what I thought was on the agenda, so it would be helpful just in the future to have kind of the, like when we have a policy change, to have the justification, right, but in a similar process, to have kind of the deeper clarification and information around it ahead of time.
right, just to clarify, it's not a policy change. It's a request, from what I understand, on the part of the SEA to the board made through the superintendent.
Right. May I?
And, go ahead.
No, go. I want to hear you out.
I'm mostly done anyway, thanks.
Is there
Okay.
a deadline that we need to be aware of?
But I want to make sure that, like, so if it was given to us ahead of time, I could have asked some of these questions and I could have done some of this preparation. We probably do pass it tonight right now. So, like, that's where I would say, like, having it ahead of time would have been beneficial, just so we can, quote unquote, do our homework. Like,
I didn't print this up ahead of time. As you see, it was a last minute. And the other thing is that it was also what I thought was going to be a very short putt, but that's fine. Jason. Oh, sorry. Darcy had her hand up first, and Jason.
Oh, I just, if there's a deadline that we need to be aware of?
I mean,
Okay.
the grievance is technically resolved, so I think what you're saying is let's open it back up and talk about it further. Because it's not, I mean, they were asking for the definition to be determined tonight by either you or me,
Okay.
and then the grievance is over.
So
But
all we're doing,
if
we're not
you wanna-
adjusting policy, we're not creating new policy, we're not amending policy. We're simply being asked to either appoint you to use the Michigan compiled law designation for what physical assault is.
Right.
Or us to
it.
adopt MCL. That's,
Right.
because we're not gonna rewrite law, because
Right.
if, we would have to change our school policy for that.
But
So-
I do hear people saying they don't necessarily agree with this definition, and then therefore
I don't
potentially you
either.
take it
However,
back.
agreeing with it or not agreeing with it, it is the law. Therefore, I understand more clearly now. I don't believe any further deliberation would change what we have to do, but I'm open to.
I don't
kicking
either,
it.
but we've been asked to table it to 2 weeks from now. Brad, did you have something to add?
Sure, I hear what you're saying on that, because MCL 750.81 does define assault as intentional and illegal act that causes another person to reasonably fear immediate battery, is what I'm reading, like, from the law. And there's a lot of other words and a lot of other things, but like, that word is a portion of it. I guess I just would like to do more homework on this. I'm probably gonna vote on it and be like, yeah, whatever, but I'm feeling really awkward about it right now.
I don't want to keep beating the dead horse. 1311 is specifically talking about a school setting and specifically talking about staff, and I think that is why it's being called into question.
You said 1311?
1311, yeah.
Yeah, no, it is, and I just read it, and
It's
I don't like it.
I don't either, but I disagreeing with the law means we have to vote in people to change the law, but it is the law, and it is specifically in 1311 talking about school setting and talking about staff, contractors, vendors, et cetera, specifically in that sense.
Is the word intentionally in here?
Yes.
Where? Can you point it out? I have 1311 up.
It is 1311 12B. Physical assault means intentionally causing or attempting to cause physical harm to another through force or violence. It is that, I mean, they're asking us for something very basic now that I have clarity as to what is being asked of us. It's simply agreeing that we're agreeing with the law.
I would also request more time. I mean, I'm cognizant of several things going on in our boardroom, on this side of the room, on the back side of the room. So there's more to this that I would like more time on, to echo what has been said.
We've had 2 board members discuss this. If this is not going to affect the outcome of the grievance, then let's, if what we're about to talk about isn't going to set us back a month, come up by all means and clarify things for us, please. Brandon and Carol, holding hands. Thank you.
We've been working very closely on this together. It's not the interpretation of the law.
No. It
It's
is
the
int-
interpretation of law.
it's
It's
not
not
the
the
definition.
definition, it's the interpretation.
So we are okay with that definition. The question is, who gets to interpret that word intentional? That has been the source of our grievance, because there's been a number of issues where we have disagreed with that interpretation of intentionality. We would love a process where it could be a group collaborative effort to determine these things. We feel like we have been left out of that. So I'm the grievance chair. I wrote the grievance. The grievance request wasn't, or the one that Steve specifically brought to you tonight wasn't, will you change this definition of assault? That's not our request. It is, who is determining that? Because we were told at the grievance meeting, as Trustee Stebbin mentioned, that it was Dr. Lodge. And per Lansing versus Lansing Board of Ed case law, it is the board unless you guys designate. We're simply asking to follow case law.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go
I'm
ahead.
just teasing.
Go ahead.
No, that is what it's coming down to, and there are daily things that Dr. Lotch or any superintendent has to make decisions on, and we're really working hard at resolving this. Some of that, a lot of what we have to follow is the law. So based on MDE, we have to look at 7 factors when we're disciplining kids. We also have to look at MARS and IDEA. So it's very layered and complicated, and it's happening in real time. Having someone local and in place to be able to help sort that out. It's not saying we wouldn't have those conversations together, but to help sort that out would benefit and keep things. I don't think you want us to stop our jobs to call the board every time we have to make a decision around this, and that's where we've been stuck. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
We just want to be included
yes,
in the process, and we feel like the voice has been left out a little bit.
and we're working on including them.
Correct.
Can I ask a question, though? Isn't that part of the grievance procedure of the contract, or wouldn't that be a definition that, or something that could be a portion of that?
Yeah,
process?
we've taken lots of really positive steps forward, and this is continued work. Even though we have agreed to move forward from the grievance, there's lots of work that we're still planning together to make sure that we get this in a good place for everybody, our staff, our kids, our administrators, et cetera. So we're committed to working together.
Thank you.
Can I just summarize that? Basically what both Brandon and Carol are saying is they're not asking you to change the definition. They're simply asking you to make me the designee, and then they're working on having more or less let's just say SEA representation at the table when you're determining if it's an intentionality type of thing.
That's not what we were asking. That's what we were asking to be decided.
It is who interprets the law, you or the board.
Okay, so
Yes.
would you like to
that's our
interpret it, or would you like me to?
Is it interpreting the law or interpreting the intentionality? That's two different things. That's very different things.
What's been the crux of most of our issues is the intentionality piece.
Okay.
Okay, so here's
Dr.
how
Lodge,
here was how I would if I need to be called to determine if it's intentional. I'm going to go back to what Tommy was asking. Well, which team is going to help determine whether it was intentional or not? And then after they decide, then I would say, okay, this team believes it's intentional. I'd say, yes, it is. This team says it's a manifestation of their disability. I would say it's not intentional. That's how I would approach that. Now, if it's a student that doesn't have special needs, it's not in their IEP, then I would say it's intentional. I mean, that's how I would handle it if called upon.
So
You should never testify in front of Senate.
So I appreciate you coming up and
thanks.
thank
All
you. That was because I guess my big part of this was the intentionality and being subjective, and I think it's not about whether we give it to you or we do it. I want to give it to you, and so I'm good with that. And I think just the collaboration, like you said, with people to figure out the intentionality. I think that'd be okay by me.
Do you have more to add, Brad? Thought I saw your hand up. Are you? No. Okay.
I'm really in thought right now, to be
All right.
honest with you.
Well,
I'm still kind of in a pickle on this.
Well,
If you
Sorry,
made me vote.
I couldn't hear what you said.
I said I'm still in a pickle on this, and if I had to vote on it right now, I really am unknown. I'll be bluntly honest.
I think there was a great deal of clarification there, and I agree with Dr. Lotch's approach. I'll defer to President McVeigh.
well, having heard from our reps and from Carol Diglio about the intent of this, I'd like to withdraw my tabling and ask, is there anyone who would stand by this motion that we designate superintendent to define assault?
Michael, I think the motion, if you wanted to move forward, would need to be rewritten because I think we're talking about defining intentionality, not defining assault, because that's defined by law. Is that correct?
None of the above. No.
I guess I am asking for more time, if that's possible.
I agree with Darcy.
I'm not confident in my complete understanding of the situation to move forward tonight. And if we move forward, we move forward, but I'm just asking for more time.
All right. So let's go back to the beginning. If there's not enough people to make the motion, and if we don't get enough votes, then we table this to the next meeting pending more information.
Well, what are my options if I'm like not prepared to vote on? Like, I guess I've never been in this position where I couldn't, like, didn't know.
Well, let's make it real
Am I
simple.
allowed to abstain?
Nope. Let's make it real simple, because that would be stepping away from your duties as.
Well, I understand that. I just want to know what my options are here.
I'm going to make it. I'd like to make it.
It's been 5 years, but I'm
Brad,
still, okay.
Thanks. Sorry for interrupting. I'd like to make it really simple. I'd like to table this for 2 weeks from now, March 11th, to bring it to the table. This was the language, Jennifer, that was provided to me by the SEA and Steve in the motion, just so you know. So do I have a motion to table this? That's Darcy Berwick,
I'll second.
Jennifer Steven. We've had plenty of discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Here we go. That's 5-1, by the way. I was prepared to vote on that, so I'm the one against. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the award payment of $2,908,353.15 to Barton Mallow, who I think are in the audience tonight. Yep. For the oversight and management of Saline Bid Pack BP T3 as submitted by Jay Grossman, Director of Technology. This includes contracts for standardization of classroom AV to take place at Saline High School, Saline Middle School, Heritage, and Liberty. It also includes cabling, data cabling to go along with these classrooms, plus cabling for the middle school renovations and new Liberty Rec complex. Additionally included are AV access controls and video surveillance for the middle school renovations. That's quite a hefty motion, but do I have a motion from anyone? Anyone in the audience?
So moved.
Who was that? Austin? Thank Berwick is seconding. So anything you can tell us about this that hasn't been said already?
There's a lot. So first off, thank you all very much for entertaining it. Sorry if I'm under the weather a little bit. That's why I'm wearing a mask. This is a large project that's going to take place over the next 2 summers. Essentially, the classroom standardization is a continuation of what we passed this time last year. We'll be carrying that over from to complete the high school, middle school, Liberty, and Heritage with replacement of projectors, additional displays, wireless display capabilities, cabling to go with all of that. Also in this is the renovations to the middle school, the AV access control, video surveillance that will be going in place for the new additions for senior center, cosmetology, robotics, and in addition, once construction starts, doing the fiber and access control, video surveillance for the Liberty Rex complex. So I tried to bundle it all into one package, take care of it all at once, which is why it's such a large number at this time, but hopefully this will take us through the next 2 summers so that once all the construction is complete, everything is ready to go.
Any questions?
Didn't miss anything.
One question from Brad.
Ask me. Where is this with regards to what we budgeted for the project? And then the second thing is these funds are designated from where?
Good question. So as far as with the regards to the budget, it's actually going to end up being under budget. We were just reviewing numbers on that, so everything is coming under what we originally applied for in the 2022 bond. That's just where the funds are going to be coming from.
So this is from the 2022 bond?
Correct.
And so it's from Series 1?
Yes. I don't know if it will bleed into Series 2 or not, but I believe it is all part of Series 1.
It's all, okay. Yeah. But it's bond funds. I just
But it's
wanted
all
to
bond
know this
funds.
isn't general fund dollars.
This is not general
isn't
fund, yeah.
some other fund. These are
Nope.
bond dollars.
This
Thank
is
you.
all bond dollars and
And you've always been good. Yes, sir.
I didn't see a breakdown from the responses for the selected contractors, but I did see that Sentinel Technologies was selected for video surveillance.
Mhm.
Do you know what equipment they'll be using?
Verkada to keep it consistent with what's throughout the district.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No opposition, thank you very much. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the award payment of $101,700 to Enacomp TSG for the purchase of classroom document cameras to be installed this summer at the high school, the middle school, Heritage, and Liberty in conjunction with the standardization project as submitted by Jay Grossman, Director of Technology.
Kirby.
Kirby.
Second, Tizities.
Tizities. Sorry.
So this will go in conjunction, as said. It's just, it's also bond funds again, but instead of it being managed through Barton Mello, we're just taking this on ourselves. I wanted to order this at the same time, so with supply chains and possible tariffs that we can get them all in here. It's going to go with the same classrooms. We're replacing their document cameras to be the same as what's in the 3 elementary schools.
Super. No discussion, no questions? He answered your question, great. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
There you go, sir. Sirs, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Saline High School furnishing recommendations as provided by King Scott Associates using pre-existing bid contracts totaling $1,465,903.92 submitted by Executive Directors Rex Clary and Kara Davis. Individual vendor payments will go to the following: Great Lakes Furniture Supply, $567,037. $567,037.49. NBS Commercial Interiors, $525,262.80. Jew-El, $164,758.68. ISCG, $15,577.84. Interior Office Store, $98,556.42. School Specialty, $9,485. NEIS, $7,250, and a 6% contingency fee of $82,975.69. That's the hardest thing I've had to do all year. Thank you very much. I only missed one number, thank you. Any comments from Rex and Kara?
So moved.
Oh, sorry, yes, thank you. That's Tim.
I'll second it.
Brad, thank you.
We don't have any comments necessarily. We appreciated the partnership with King Scott designers and the high school teachers and administrators as a part of the, review of what is existing furniture in the building and then the replacements that we're planning. There's a lot of collaboration and it's a really big space, so we were able to accomplish a lot. So we're happy to answer any questions.
I was at the high school for one of the Shark Tanks the other day, and I think I sat in some of the same chairs that we're bidding on tonight. So this is similar equipment that we already have in the buildings, correct? Exactly.
We've taken what we did at the middle school as well as the K-5 buildings. We're taking that up to the high school. The high school is the last building that we.
Oh, I see.
It's 22 years old now.
So those were well-worn chairs that we were sitting in. Okay, thank you.
So mine's not really a question, maybe it is a little bit of a question, but so with all this furniture, I mean, there's a lot. What are we doing with all the old stuff? Like, where does that all go? I just, I hear my daughter, she's in a placement and, they don't have nice facilities and all the stuff. They aren't as blessed to have a community supporting us like Saline is. And so it's like, is our furniture good enough that it can go somewhere else to be helpful or useful? I don't know.
So we just signed a contract with Brown and Helmer. We do have an auction scheduled for mid to late June of this year. So they will auction off classrooms or, I don't know what they call them. I don't know how they refer to them as auctioneers, but what'd you say? Yeah. And we're already listed on their website. There'll be some woodworking equipment. There'll be some lumber. There'll be some grounds equipment, trucks that we retired, old school buses as well. If we don't sell them for scrap, we'll sell them into this auction. So that's our first swing at getting rid of getting a cash flow back for the existing furniture. The second will be we can donate. We pay for labor and shipping, but it can be donated to other countries, other people, and there is a service that I've spoken to in regards to that as well.
I just would think there's other communities around here that could use it. And so, if we're going to get pennies on the dollar, or if it can really, boost the morale of these other schools, might be helpful just to give it to somebody.
And what we're replacing is those 2-person desks. as well as the black chairs, which was what was the staple in the building when it was open in 2004.
Thanks for the question, Tim. Anyone else? No?
Yeah, budget and source of funding. Are we,
Bond funds, and we're just under 1.5 million was the budget, so we're right there. We will be coming back to you with a different budget for the media center, not for the media center, for the STEAM center, furniture, addition.
Super. Thank you, then.
And with this approval tonight, hopefully we'll get it installed. The goal is to get it installed the week of July 7th. When you get into August, you don't want to give up your furniture until you have new furniture. But yeah, we got to make a lot of room for this new furniture. So it's a timing piece in how we do that and how we do that dance as we get through the summer. There'll be a lot of moving parts at the high school. So.
Well, thank you. So moved by Austin, seconded by Gerby. All in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thank you very much. We have one scheduled report from Dr. Lotch. I believe he's the superintendent. For now.
Thank you, everyone. Tonight we're going to talk about school of choice, but we're going to talk most of the presentation is about enrollment. And before I start, I do want to preface with something that Miranda said. And she said, there's lots of moving parts within the budget. Enrollment and school of choice are a big part of that moving part for our budget, or moving parts. And so as we think about enrollment over the years, we think about what does declining enrollment that exists in most districts in Michigan, including ours, mean for our budget longer term, and what does school of choice mean as it supplements some of that loss. And then ultimately, what does all this mean as we try to live in a sustained fund balance of 12 to 15% moving forward? Not just one time, but how do we look forward to 2 and 3 and 4 years to determine that what we'll call flattening of enrollment, so we don't have the loss in the district anymore, and to a point where we would be able to say, okay, now we're flat with enrollment, and now we can better understand our finances in order to maintain that more sustainable fund balance number. Now, with that said, let's begin. If we look at that first slide that Ben has referred to, and some of this is a repeat of a presentation I gave last year, but I feel like it's important context, so we'll do parts of this again. And that is the difference between FTE, the full-time equivalent, and headcount. In short, FTE is the number used to fund school districts. So when we talk about that per pupil allocation, that's using FTE. And that full-time students are considered 1.0, but we have many students in various programs that count as 0.5 or 0.3. And so that's the FTE component. But then we use head count to look more at like trend patterns, because even if we have a 0.3 of a student, we would say that's a 1.0 student. It relates to head count. Okay, so moving forward to the next slide. This slide looks at enrollment fall to spring, which always goes down a little bit in the spring. You'll see that trend pattern. But really what is important to see here is that we are declining some. But the good news that we realized last year was we had budgeted to be down 110 students, but we actually were down 77. So really that's a little over $300,000 to the good. Well, that does allow a little more time as we continue to right size the district. And so this is what our number is for this fall, and that will likely go down slightly in the spring like it does in other years. Okay, as we talk, let's go to the next one, Ben. Yeah, special programs headcount. Okay, so these are all the programs that we also count some allocation to, and I'll just run through them real quick. So that's alternative high school, young adult program, WEOC, which stands for Washtenaw Educational Options Consortium. That includes things like Y-High, Early College Alliance, WAVE. Yeah, it's really those three. Well, and there's also the middle school version of Y-High, or WIMA. Anyway, so that's what that is there, and then that's Progress Park, early childhood special education, and plus early intervention. It used to be called Early On. And then that stands for Washtenaw Christian and St. Andrews, where we get some FTE as a result of servicing some students in some capacity. Anyway, that makes up our special programs headcount. Now, the next slide is an important one, and this is these trend patterns of enrollment. So just like Miranda will try to budget what she thinks is going to happen based on all the variables, we're also trying to predict what we think is going to happen as we move from year to year. The most critical class that we really focus on, though, is the young fives and kindergarten group, because that clearly has a domino effect moving forward. There's a couple trend patterns to notice, and that's the far right column that says class cohort change. So you'll notice that you see some positive numbers, which is good. That means the cohort's growing from year to year. Like the second graders, when they move to third grade, they're growing. And then you see some areas where they're not. But the most important thing to look at here is sort of the extremes. We feel like we're starting to grow more at the lower levels, but we're shedding students, so to speak, at the upper levels. So eventually, that will start to stabilize as those minus 21s and minus 14s start to dissipate. That is the more of the stabilization point. Now, another thing that happens every year is we get, every year we have a couple hundred students that leave the district, and then we have a couple hundred coming in for other reasons. And I'm not talking about school of choice here. I'm just talking about normal attrition and normal gain. I do believe that moving forward, we're still going to be considered a destination district, one in which people are trying to either move here or get in through school of choice. So we have that certainly going for us, but what you are going to see next is sort of that trend of a lot less kids in Michigan. Okay, so to summarize next slide, Ben, thank you. The enrollment information is those final numbers. A loss of 77 students, but because we budgeted for 110, we are seeing some a better financial situation as a result of that. And in looking at that 96.08 current per pupil foundation rate, that means a little over $300,000 to the good. Okay, now declining birth rate nationwide. Next slide, please, Ben, thank you. This was a previous one I had, just showing that there's this declining birth rate nationwide, but a more relevant, newer slide. Ben, next one, please. This was from MLive the other day, and I think it's pretty clear what you see here, and that is the last 4 years we've seen more deaths than births. What does that mean? There's a lot less kids, just in as a whole. So the goal for us clearly is to continue to attract as many families as possible to move here, but I would also say still keep our school of choice options open so that we also can, continue to realize approximately $700,000 that's built into the structure of our district as a result of those students. Okay, so real quick, there's 3 real significant factors, I believe, to enrollment loss. The most significant is the birth rate, less kids. The second one, though, is that families really do have a lot more choices. Definitely, we've seen this trend moving forward, and even greater after COVID, where more families are homeschooling, choosing other options, choosing some virtual options. And so, we need to be considering that. When we put together our bond, we really did think about, well, how do we remain a really competitive school district to make sure we have first-class facilities, and obviously we want great teachers and administrators to say to our community and beyond that, hey, Saline is keeping up with the times and exceeding that, so we continue to offer our students a first-class education. And then another one is the affordability component, with mortgage rates being high. This is also another reason why I would advocate for a school of choice does allow for families to potentially come to the district that may not be able to afford being here or might not want to live in the district. So that comes into play. Okay, so I'll be brief on this. Right sizing the district. We talked about this plan over the next, I came here last year and said, we're going to need to reduce $1 million each year for the next 3 years as we try to right size the district, meaning less FTE for our teaching staff potentially because we have less students. We did do that last year. We by attrition, we reduced some FTE of our teaching staff that initially resulted in $1 million in savings, but we had to hire a few teachers back at the elementary level, which is good because there was demand down there. It really resulted in about $750,000 in savings. In addition, moving forward, we have, because we have our fund balance in a better structural position now, we can now say we're pausing for next year and not needing to do that $1 million in general fund reductions. And then we will continue to monitor it all moving forward and make a decision in the following fiscal year as to whether we're needing to make a move with further reductions based on, students coming into the district and so forth. Anyway, then the goal is obviously to achieve this revenue and expenditures being equal structurally moving forward. And then Miranda already spoke about this, that we are realizing about a 24% fund balance right now. Now, the last part of the presentation is to talk about School of Choice itself. So if you can turn to the handout that I passed out to everybody at the beginning. These are the tentative guidelines that I'm setting for them for School of Choice, which I will ask you to vote on at the next board meeting. Anyway, if you look at the first page on this, and Ben, can you click on that part that says guidelines? Just so we can have that up there so everybody knows. Oh, well, all right, you need access. Okay, forget that. The board has the sheet in front of you. Anyway, if you look at the part that says openings available in 25-26, we typically, and again this year, are suggesting that most of our School of Choice intake happens at the kindergarten level. And when it says 25 minimum, it means if we had 30 students apply for kindergarten, we would, after we do the lottery that would put every student in an order, we would take the first 25 students. At least when it says minimum, we could take more. Now then, every other grade level, we're doing the minimum opening of 1, meaning that we need to take 1, but we could take more based on trends at that particular grade level. And then there are a few points, specifically 9th grade, where we do have more kids coming back into high schools. And that's because they may have gone to a K-8 school that doesn't have a high school, and then they're coming back in. And as a result, we want to open more openings at the 9th grade level specifically. So when it's all said and done, this is my recommendations for our minimum opening slots for next year. And then as it relates to how many students are actually in the district of School of Choice, we do have a policy that states that we're needing to attempt to keep the School of Choice enrollment at roughly 10%. We really have done a reasonably good job of that over the last 5-6 years. If you look at the trend pattern, we sometimes are slightly under, we are sometimes slightly over, but we're not seeing wild swings where one year we're at 10% and then the next year we're at 18%. or even the other way, we're only at 4%. So we are trying to live, certainly live into that policy and feel like we've been accomplishing that. And so ultimately, after we get this process approved, Mandy and Sarah Ann, who manage enrollment in the front office, they have an interest list that people have been signing up for. And then right when it gets approved, whatever that looks like, they send that information out to parents. And then there's a window of time where they can apply for it. And then we will be doing the lottery, which is on May 12th. And then after that, people have a certain window of time to enroll before they give up their spot. And I will point this out, that historically we have about a 60 to 70% capture rate, because there are certainly parents who apply for multiple school districts and they get into multiple school districts and then they choose to go to one or another. So it's not 100% capture rate. And then sometimes people apply and just decide that they don't want to do it after. So there's a variety of reasons for that. Do people have questions about enrollment or school of choice?
I think we briefly touched on it. Maybe what was the number of school of choice students leaving and that are in 12th grade right now?
It's about
says
35 or 36.
Okay,
And then
that's
what ends up happening, though, just by attrition, we also lose students. And the typical number that we've generally taken for school of choice each year is between 60 and 70, and it ultimately does sort of still fall into that 10% range. Yeah.
I just wanted to say I really appreciated you reaching back out to me. I had a couple of questions after the weekly, just to surface them ahead of time, and providing the presentation ahead of time really helps as well. So thank you for doing that.
Sure.
And I recognize that you have always gone around that 10% guideline over those years. So thank you very much. We talked a little bit about natural entry points into the school district at K, at 6, and at 9, and I like seeing at least 5. I would like to see potentially a little bit less in kindergarten and a little bit more in 6 or 9, just to consider because of the reason that I did flag it for you, that typically we don't understand the histories of the children entering in K, and sometimes that has led to feedback from staff with extra work around assessing for potential supports. And so that can throw things around a little bit in the elementary school. So that was the reason that I wanted to ask about the 25 when we talked.
We could potentially do a 20 and then a 5 for 6th grade like we did with 9th.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
Thank you for considering that and the feedback in the past as well.
Sure.
Does that mean you're going to modify this for
Well,
a vote next in 2
We
weeks?
could if
I thought I
enough
just heard you
people
say
felt. I mean, I look at it from the standpoint of whether we put 20 for kindergarten and then put 5 for 6th grade. It still ultimately we still would likely take more kindergartners than 20, because historically we have often 50 or 60 kindergarten applicants, so to speak. And then in the other grades, we always have a lot less. Now, we do tend to have more in 6th grade and more in 9th grade. So it could speak to just bumping, 6th grade up to 5 and putting kindergarten at 20. But I think ultimately we probably end up taking more than 20 at the kindergarten level and probably more than 5 at the 6th grade level, even if we had it as a minimum of one opening. So I don't know that it makes that big of a difference, but if the board felt like we should list it as 20 and 5, I don't have an issue doing that and changing the document.
I just had a quick question from something that you referenced from the finance committee meeting, but the minimums, when we set it at 1, it can be 3, it can be 7. So changing the minimums, I I don't think is necessary. We could take 7 or 8 kids at 6th grade without changing the minimum.
You're right.
And most likely, we would still take more than 20, more than 25 at kindergarten. And I think Brad had a really good point in our finance meeting that, and Jen's point is very valid too, because that was a big concern of mine with the assessments. But when we get the kids younger, they are Saline students, and we have a better way of molding those students at a younger level. So I would
I
not
mean, they
wanna
become
reduce that.
part of the culture earlier.
Right, exactly, and
Yeah, right.
from the beginning. But I do like Jen's idea of being able to have some of those natural entry points be
Sure, we
able to
could-
be increased.
We
but
could
I don't think-
easily change that number
Right,
though,
but
just,
but I don't think we need to change the number as long as we were
Okay.
open to that. Because
yeah, which we would be,
Right, and because if we set the number at 5, we have to take 5, is that
That's correct.
So I don't think we would want to hamstring ourselves with that.
Well, and I'll even piggyback on that and say if we do change the number, then we may end up only taking 20 kindergartners. And now, so there's a piece about, like, I just believe in our staff, like I said, in the quality of our staff and making hornets, right? But the other piece is that there's this, this piece about, like, when you capture them, you keep them too, right? And so if you capture kids as kindergartners, theoretically, they're going to be hornets for 13 years. If you don't capture them until 6, now you're only capturing for 7 years. Enrollment, and you capture their FTE for 13 years, the whole thing. And in general, please help me if I'm wrong on this, Steve, but in general, I believe it is slightly less costly to educate a elementary student. So there's benefit in us capturing that student for 13 years is my point, rather than just in those secondary years.
I mean, high school programs are typically more costly.
Right.
The programs themselves.
I'm not
so-
saying, I'm not passing value. I mean, my gosh,
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I
kindergarten when they
get it,
learn how to
yeah.
read is the most important thing that they can do for my kid. Like, I want to be very clear, out loud, there, right there. But I'm
mean-
just saying from a budget and money standpoint,
Yeah.
capturing them as kindergartners is just better for our financial, how about that, I say it that way, for the financial health and well-being of our district.
Correct.
And thank you for providing me the opportunity to make sure that I knew that elementary is, they have a hard job.
Well, thank you.
So it sounds like I would leave those numbers.
That's what I would
Yeah,
prefer.
okay, then we will.
Thank you. Unless there's nothing from anyone
Thanks,
else. Thank you.
everyone.
So we look forward to voting on this next week, the next meeting without too much discussion. Thank you. We're at a discussion item now, the ad hoc committee report and the third-party athletic review proposals. I would like to just have a general discussion before we make the motion then. By the way, it's in your packet, page 72 is where it starts. We have 3 candidates at this point, candidates for contractors at this point who have put their names forward. Scott Jarvis, based in Iowa, Scott Robertson, based out in the left side of the state, Grand Rapids or Kalamazoo, I can't remember which, and Amy Gibbs, who is a lawyer from the Ann Arbor area. Tim and Lauren and I interviewed all of them on video, and the only one I was not able to, I didn't actually seek out references for, was Amy Gibbs. It was just, an oversight on my part. I got references for the other 2 who since bailed. We were unable to get Brian Macy to come, and we were unable to get Brian Gordon to come from Lodi. So just open the floor to a discussion about the relative merits of any of these contractors, assuming there are some merits.
I had a follow-up question before we talked about that. So when we talked about this at the table last time, there was a conversation about maybe more refinement to the RFP ask. And so I was just curious if anyone from the committee went back and asked for some specific, because I think it was like a broad brush that you used initially, and we had thought potentially we could have more of a cost savings if we narrowed the scope of the project. Did that occur, and are those numbers reflected here?
No, there was a broad brush that was already out there for everybody except Amy Gibbs, and she saw the same list. But for all three candidates, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, we all gave them the option of narrowing it down. Whatever we decide on, we're gonna cut the numbers down to what it is we think we need and what they're able to provide for us. So the answer is no. We did not go back to the contractors and say, narrow this down for us. But we all talked to all of them, and they had said, we're prepared to narrow it down if you want us to.
Yeah,
And
and
will
just-
work with us.
And to some extent, they added some things so that not two of them look the same either, really, because some of them added some things that they thought were relevant on their own too. So I do think there are some things that we can ask to be trimmed off. I mean, I'll just say it. I'm more for Scott Robertson. That's who I would. And so looking at his, like the resource allocation and fundraising, I don't really think that's necessary. Darcy, did you have some additionals or something? I don't know.
Yes, I was along those veins, interested in, I guess, trimming some of the proposal down to really addressing what it is that we are looking for specifically for Saline. Just wanted to make sure that we're doing that in the proper order. If we need to go back and ask before we commit to hiring someone, if they'll actually agree to our terms.
Well, yes, that would be an important part of this. They're not just going to give them carte blanche to dive into the district. We were going to set terms and parameters and the boundaries. Brett?
I'm wondering if we could word the motion then tonight in like how we do, almost like a superintendent motion, like where we pick a person to quote unquote enter into negotiations with, and then that way you guys can bring back to us like the specifics. And then if we have a person to target, I think that would be a good way to go. I will throw out my thoughts on the three, and I would welcome everybody else's thoughts. The first person, I will flat out tell you that Scott Jarvis's proximity to Iowa and some of those kinds of things, his cost is significant. I was not as comfortable with him as the choice. The third one, I was not as comfortable with for a couple of reasons. Number one, I just didn't see the expertise with regards to athletics and doing that kind of a review or report. And so I was a little bit challenged. And I was also a little challenged, I'll frankly say, I think it was $495 per hour. And then how many hours are they putting in? And that could, get real costly real fast. So I will second Tim's, that the second guy, Scott Robertson, right, is the second person. And I think that's the person who I would have the most, when I look at his resume, I think he would have the most credibility with our coaching staff, with our athletic programs, our athletic director and our assistant athletic director. So I guess I would say, number one, I wonder if we could do our motion that way, like enter into negotiations with something that comes back to us to approve an exact amount. And then the second thing is I will throw out there out of the three, preference for the second one.
I'm just noting your motion change. Anyone else wants to?
So I guess what I'd like to see happen is maybe a motion made where we authorize President McVeigh to go back and talk to Scott Robertson about enter into a contract with Scott Robertson with the intention of removing certain aspects that we can decide today with the quote not to exceed a dollar amount so that we can get it approved. He can get it signed right away, get moving on this so it's not waiting now until May 11th, then we rehash it again May 11th, or March 11th, sorry about that. It'll end up in May, but March 11th, and then we can get this motion moving forward.
I agree with Tim. I would only edit the word and say refine versus remove, because it's possible that you would keep everything but just tweak it. Yeah, just a little language. Sounds good. I did want to say something about Garvis, like it talked about the bespoke nature of the proposal and the customization, but there were at least two
Other school districts. in
others,
that
thank
quote.
you. I'm just gonna
I'm like,
acknowledge that, and I think my other colleagues found that as well, so I was like, and I had the same hourly rate concerns, like I would have definitely put a cap on it, and it seemed very open-ended, so, from a financial perspective.
As I'm doing the memo, did you want me to set a limit at this point, or just to say that we will set a limit to the amount that we'll spend?
yeah.
I think we could set the limit at what he is currently proposed, because if anything, we're asking him to do, gonna be asking him to do less.
Almost all of them said, I'll do this and plus expenses, so that's where the,
Yeah, and I,
just says 12,000.
well then,
This is flat.
I will say that number is high for me. We're spending $9,000 to find a superintendent to lead an entire district. It feels high. And I feel like if we're asking him to take some things out, which I don't know that we need, like operations and facilities management or fundraising, that cost can come down.
I would agree with Darcy on that. I do think it's a little bit high. However, as Brad pointed out, it is a flat fee. There is no additional expenses, at least that I can see. And I do like his timeline approach because he is spending a lot of time on site, which I think is significantly better than Jarvis and the third option, which I don't believe had a timeline. So I like that, but I do agree with Darcy. I think it is a little bit high, and there's some things in the proposal that we don't necessarily need.
So how about we throw out a number, Eddie? Like what, I will throw out a number of 10,000.
Well, how about we go back to the proposal that I heard, and let's give a little sway on some negotiation here, because
Okay.
it could be that he comes in lower than that.
All right.
And like, depending on how many things are refined, it's possible he come in and say, it's 7, or, whatever. I don't want to
So
put a ceiling on something that might not need a
no,
ceiling.
that's fair.
From a negotiation standpoint.
That's why I think we could use the not to exceed number that is currently here.
That's what I was throwing that number out
Yeah.
for, was not to exceed. But we
So-
could say that we could authorize President McVeigh to remove those 2 items that have come up a couple times, if you guys are comfortable with that. And then seeing, if it's a reasonable, within a contingency of whatever, authorize him just to do it. Yeah, I hear you. Like, you want
Yeah,
to
just
move
to
in.
give him a cap it at 12, and hopefully he's gonna come in at 10.
Well, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then that
Because-
way, and I see what, Vice President Stebbin is saying, because then also, like, if you're watching our public meeting, you might be like,
I
hey, I'm gonna ask
It's
for
out
that then. So it's not great negotiations, now that I think about it. But, anyway, that's my thoughts.
I'm getting the motion is to authorize President McVeigh to enter into negotiations with Scott Robertson is the name we're all hearing. I'm hearing a lot of nods across the table to refine the scope of work and set a hard limit. Shall we just not put a number down? Casey's watching this now. It's a whole brave new world we're in now, where our contractors are hanging on our every words before. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's 10 bullet points here. If we remove 2, I can't really say that we're taking 20% of the work away, and that equates to 20% of the fee, because some things are going to be more work than others.
I'm hearing facilities, fundraising. Were there others
Well,
on there that
and
you?
climate and culture, and protocols,
Well,
and
wait, I think climate was what started us off.
yeah,
though.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that some are more heavy lifts than others, so I don't.
So I'm asking, are there any that low-hanging fruit that we could cut from the list at this point?
I
Operations.
think the 2, resource allocation and fundraising, operations and facility management.
So I would agree with operations and facility management. I think when I thought of the word refinement, I was actually thinking about resource allocation and fundraising, knowing from a finance perspective, the student funds and how that operates and how many there are and how layered it is. And I have had feedback, and I don't know if others at the board table have, I believe so, about the handling of different clubs or teams' fees. I think that component is an important one to have in here. I don't know if I'd phrase it right like that, but
Well, and I don't know that we need a third-party person to look at that for us.
I think that's a whole nother animal on its own,
do
to be
too.
honest with you.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And I personally, I don't think that's what you're paying for anyway. You don't want person digging into the minutiae of fees and treasurers for each club and sport and so
right.
forth.
So just so everyone understands what I'm saying, not an audit of the student activities funds, nothing related to Miranda's and Plant Moran's audit, nothing like that. So operationally, how are teams handling their cash flow before it comes into her is what I said. I just wanted to clarify. So it's the before piece that it comes to the school district.
Right. So who's making that motion?
Well, I'll do it, and what I would just do, I think we just authorize it, you to enter into the negotiations, and I'll put the ceiling at 12, like, that's fine. 'Cause I put the ceiling at what it is, and then we're targeting to go lower. And then I would authorize you to make good judgment on that. So I guess if you want to read what you wrote, and then just say that I'm adding into it the ceiling of 12,000.
I just put it in now, so.
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion about this? You're sure? Super. This is not as to whether we're going to have it or not. It's to who's going to do it. I got it. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Hearing no opposition, I will get started on that. I've got to deal with South Carolina tomorrow, but I will deal with this. I will send a note to him right away this evening probably, and I'll let you know how it turns. Consent agenda, I'm going to skip all the bits at the beginning and say I'd like to entertain a motion to. If I skipped, you know what? I wrote so many notes on my agenda that I just wrote right over that. So, administration board updates. Thanks. Thank you, Brad.
I just have one, and I do want to thank the SEA members for airing their concerns tonight. I realize there's a lot of frustration on their part and on the district negotiating team as well. I do feel like we've done a good job of being very collaborative on the vast majority of the items within the contract and have tentative agreements in many of the areas. And I really do look forward to moving to mediation for the specific part of salary as it relates to the contract. And that process will begin on March 10th.
Thank you. Students.
I'll start. I just want to say good luck to all of the Saline bands that are going to festival. I know I'm going tomorrow, and then we have some going Friday, so good luck to them.
Where are you going for that?
Festival. It's just almost like a band competition.
And it's here on our very own campus?
No, it's not Saline. I forget what specific high school it's at, but it's not here at Saline. We have to travel for it.
And then I wanted to mention, I mentioned this 2 meetings ago, but the Polar Plunge got moved back, so there's still time to fundraise because I think it's a really important cause. Thank you.
Thursday. Are we jumping together, Kate? Or you have a team, a squad,
I
you're
have a
jumping?
team of 3 with my friends.
They might have their outfits already.
Okay. I'm gonna,
adults, he's one of the adults.
I'm looking for, I was trying to find a tutu because everyone else seemed to be in tutus, so. I'm a little deaf on that ear, sorry.
I have a couple of comments, and here we go. So I want to acknowledge the incredible people that were here tonight, and I want you to know that I appreciate your presence. And it was nice to see so many people that have positively impacted my kids and their experience and their friends' experience. Like, I agree with a comment that was made about, like, you know, our staff, and I would go, our teachers and everybody, you really are the heartbeat of this school district, right? There's nothing that happens in the school district without you. So there's that. And then I want to give my general comments on collective bargaining for a second. So I believe in collective bargaining. I believe in negotiations. And I ultimately believe that when we take care of our educators, we take care of our kids. And so I want to talk about, I feel like our bargaining system has some things in it that like inherently build like mistrust. And so I'll explain a little bit. So the union and the administration, you meet, you bargain, you do it in good faith. I believe that that is happening and that everybody involved with the process is doing that. But then when we get updates as a board, we go into closed session and we hear from our leadership teams and the people who are present. And I will tell you, I don't believe that we don't hear the other side. So tonight it was nice to hear the perspective of the union leaders and the teachers and all that, because I think it's important for us to say that, like, if we don't listen to each other, then what it ends up doing is it makes us think, are they controlling the narrative in some way that takes out my perspective or takes out the things that are a priority to me and my family and that kind of thing? So going forward, I guess I have like it's like a dream idea, but I guess if we're going to get bargaining updates, my dream would be, and I believe in financial stewardship and being responsible, but if we go into closed session, I would like us to consider allowing both sides to present their perspectives to us so that we can then we can then get a feel for what's happening, quote unquote, in totality. Now, I know we're going into mediation, and I respect the process, and I want to let the process do its work. I want to let the people who are doing the process do their work, and I trust them to do it. But when I am personally updated or involved, it would be important to me to have that well-roundedness. And furthermore, I think that would go a long way for just maintaining and building a collaborative system and morale. Because that's my biggest concern, right, is that the people who are in this classroom tonight know their value and know how important they are and know that we want to compensate them and we want them in classrooms and that kind of thing. And so, like, I want to talk to them. I want to hear from them. And it's important to me that I be able to hear both sides. And so I guess that's my comment on collective bargaining and my feelings on the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I will say that my family started out as a school of choice family, not being able to afford to move into the district for the first few years, but we value the Saline community, and I think that the teachers are the ones who really make it a welcoming, inviting, and academically rigorous place to be and a destination district. And while my kids have graduated, I still see teachers coming that who taught my children in kindergarten and first grade and second grade. And I think it's important that we keep our teachers here. I think they're some of the best, so I appreciate that they came together today to present to us. Other than that, just a quick note that policy did end up getting rescheduled, and I think, Michael, we decided March 11th at 5.
We did. Thank you
Okay.
to Brad and his company.
So we're going to move finance to 4 p.m. so we can do that. We had an illness.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Early bird special, 4 p.m., folks.
Half off. Thank you.
The rumor is that you guys are going to go clubbing between the hour after finance and before the board meeting.
Okay, I mean, who's surprised with the music? But
I have 5 notes.
we have a DJ?
First of all, Dr. Lotch and I attended a Shark Tank together a few days ago in Mulder Stewart's class, Mrs. Mulder Stewart's class. I think I got it right. Seward. fun event. There are some Shark Tanks happening next week. You might, Mrs. Stuckey's class. Is Stuckey? Stuckey, not Stuckey. Thank you very much. Let's change the record. I'd also thank you, Kate. Yes, I was actually nervous about having 8-degree weather for the plunge. Although the the ambient temperature is so cold, it makes the thing feel like a sauna or a hot tub when you get out. I was really worried. So I'm glad it's going to be about 40-ish degrees on Thursday. I'm looking forward to the plunge. I'm also looking forward to seeing Mamma Mia on Friday or Saturday, and also to remind everybody in the community about the Jay Bennett experience is coming to town. He's looking for insights from everybody in the community for what we're looking for in their next superintendent. February 26th, he's going to be, has a number of stops, and please check your emails, March 5th and March 11th. And finally, I was up in Lansing recently and talking with about a number of bills that are out. And here we are at the tail end of African American History Month. And I just wanted to share that House Bill 4020 has been making the rounds. It is a commission to update the African American history in K to 12 instruction, and they're setting up a commission of some wonderful notables. I hope it passes out of the House soon, and they will be starting the work as soon as possible, if it passes, of course. Speaking of passing, over to you, Jennifer Steffen.
Thank you very much. This Friday is our Beads and Beats at the Foundation for Saline Area Schools, our annual fundraiser, the biggest one of the year. If you don't have tickets yet, I don't know. We could probably, Stacey Rumsa could probably figure it out, I'm sure, because she's very smart. But if you want to bid on auction items, if you can't attend in the evening and are interested in taking a look at what is up for offer, check that out now online. Supportfsas.org is their main website, if anybody has any information or any questions. Last night, I attended a Mom's Demand meeting in support of a resolution that we have passed here at the board table in the past, and joined the Washtenaw County team to listen in to hear what they have going on and to keep in contact with Monique and Susie, who came to speak with us a while back. So they were excited to see another Saline face, and I think there was another person from Saline on there too, so that was nice to see. Similarly to others at the table, I would like to acknowledge the SEA's presence and thank them very much for their time and their comments. It was very exciting to me as well to see a lot of faces that I haven't seen in many years, and thank them for all of their efforts over the years. Conversely, I would also like to thank the district's collective bargaining team. I know that they are working very hard as well to come to some agreements, and I am looking forward to seeing what happens in mediation. I was meeting with Carol DiGlio earlier this evening, and she made, I don't think she's going to care if I make this comment, but we were talking about the idea of being one team in Saline, and we were not meeting about collective bargaining. We were meeting about superintendent search, but it really resonated with me, especially knowing the SEA was around the corner when we walked into the boardroom, and we are one team. So thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate you.
I will echo a few of my colleagues regarding the SEA. I want to remind everyone that our teachers do more for our students than just educate them. They're mentors, they're protectors, they're advocates, and that's a big thing. We've had a lot of excitement in our community over the last week. So just a reminder to everybody out there to know our terminology in the schools for what a lockdown means and what a secure means and what a hold means, because a lot of misinformation can get out there. And I think that's very important for our parents to know that information, be able to teach their kids to make sure that they're listening and following instructions so that we can keep our kids safe, we can keep our staff safe, and everybody in the schools safe. And I will just wrap it up there.
I appreciated, as board president, I appreciated your attempts to clarify that on Facebook, and I gave it a hard like, if that's helpful. I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize the consent agenda as printed, please.
So moved.
Is that Austin? Tim Austin? Seconded Berwick. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
6-0. Thank you very much. And Oh, my gosh. What's on our next agenda, Dr. Lodge?
2 scheduled reports, DEIAC update and safety and security update.
Right, and in our closed session, we'll be talking about the EOP as well. And thank you. Is there any public comment, Madam? Seeing none, the next Board of Education meeting will be held on March 11th at 6:30 in this room. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:44.
So move, Stebbin.
Stebbin,
Second, Tizities?
okay, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
6-0,
Aye.
thank you very much. Slide home carefully.
Is it icy?
No, it's coming down eventually.